The opening conversation to this film immediately brings a haunting intrigue to the viewer. A man infatuated with evil, but not as a force, as a disease, something that can be spread. Peter Cushing delivers these lines with such confidence and stature, whilst painting a striking image that feels evil itself. Released in 1973, The Creeping Flesh, in my opinion, is an overlooked feature.
Do you believe in evil, Doctor?
It's an exploration of the origins of evil, bringing the conversations of what makes a man. Where does evil come from? Is it in the mind, and are some people just bad? Is it a godly force brought on by the devil? Or is it practical? Is it a living organism? This film looks at those ideas and more, approaching them in very intriguing fashion, leading to excellent character explorations, developments, and great twists and turns in the narrative. The trailer for this film, by the way, goes insanely hard.
Frankenstein's monster can be destroyed by fire. Dracula by a silver stake driven through his heart. But nothing will avail against the absolute evil of the creeping flesh.
So the Professor, played by the phenomenal Peter Cushing in one of his many films alongside Christopher Lee, unearths a humanoid skeleton of a primitive being from the dawn of time. He brought it home where he reunited with his daughter Penelope, who's positively buzzing to see her father after his time away, and after her mother passed when she was just a kid, she's been isolated for a while. Despite the warm reunion and reception in returning home, the family bonding is pretty quickly overshadowed by the Professor's work. Despite saying he'll join for breakfast, he is already entirely consumed by this skeleton that he's brought home and getting back to work. And so we see our first look at the actual skeleton, and it's great. Humanoid enough, but just huge. It's a design that fills you with dread. We realize that its origin is much further before humanity, but what doesn't really make sense is that this new discovery seems to be more advanced despite its older age. The Professor is understandably incredibly excited about all this, but leads him to being somewhat neglectful to his own daughter. And without a mother in the picture, this very clearly has an impact on Penelope. We learn a lot about him and his flaws even before we learn what he did regarding his wife. By rejecting food for breakfast and simply having tea, gives the impression that he's in a rush to return to work, essentially. Also, as this is a beloved film shown to me by my girlfriend, I asked her to be a part of this video, and while she didn't want to feature in a segment, I figured the best way would be to just kind of check in and make sure I'm doing things right. So, is this a good idea? Does this sound good?
You're all good so far.
At breakfast, we get some exposition, and I love how it's delivered in the movie. We realise that Emmanuel isn't the most successful scientist. Penelope admits how it's been difficult to really make any money while he's been away, but the Professor insists that this time his discovery will bring reward. It's another great insight into this complicated family, and to complicate it even more, we read a letter from his brother, where we find out his wife has passed away. So basically, his wife was admitted to an insane asylum, but he never told Penelope this. He had told her when she was younger that she died. So the only way to break the real news is to admit that he's been lying for all these years, and the Professor's big fear is that this thing is hereditary. This is all to do with the larger conversation of the film that we will slowly get into throughout this video. So Emmanuel goes to the asylum and meets his brother, and we learn a lot about them two in this small interaction. They're actually half-brothers, and James has always felt below Emmanuel, but now, having written all about mental illness, trying to find a prevention, he's gained a hunger to be better and pursue this and grow above Emmanuel. There is tension here, and we see in Christopher Lee's great performance how he craves for his own success and power, denying his brother from future expeditions, explaining how he is going for the same prestigious scientific prize, showing a shift in power in his private life as well as professional now, and sets the stage for his real sinister motives. The placement of the asylum in the film is representative of the Victorian era. That's when the film is set, about 1893, I believe. Mental illness at this time was all essentially seen as madness and incurable. Hence why James's asylum resembles a prison more than an actual mental institute. It appears he views the patients as observations instead of people who need help. The effect of institutions was even debated at the time. Methods were morally questionable and more likely to detriment patients' well-being, and we see that showcased in this film. So conflict naturally arises between the Professor and his daughter, as he's essentially tried to contain the memory of her mother by locking all her belongings in a room upstairs and refusing to give Penelope any information about who her mother really was, even forbidding her from talking about her in any capacity. It's clear the Professor is frightened of mental health because he doesn't understand it. He clearly hasn't dealt with the reality of what's happened to his wife. As Emmanuel is cleaning the skeleton, just with normal water, its flesh somehow grows back onto the bone. I love this stop motion effect. It reminds me a lot of Hellraiser. It's so gradual and grossly slimy. At the same time, we see how truly ruthless James is, along with his poor security at his asylum. He really does not care for the patients he oversees. We see this all put into effect when he shoots one of them for attempting to escape and gives the order to kill another escaped patient if found. The professor reads from the Book of Foreshadowing, which talks about the people of New Guinea believing their ancestors were a race of giants that were in a war between good and evil when the world was created, and should the evil one be exposed, the Skyfather would weep. Knowing the importance of this discovery and how it could alter how we view evolution entirely, he believes himself to be some kind of chosen one.
I am the White God. I alone hold this tremendous power.
His ego totally takes control here. Through the supernatural nature of the regrowing flesh and the examination of the blood cells from the finger that he detached, he surmises that this creature might be evil, as in the being. But if evil is some kind of living organism and it can be spread, then surely you can make a cure. We see the professor corrupt himself in his own experimentation, the fear of mental illness and determination to understand and cure evil, when the truth that we all know is that it's not an understandable force. So once again, this is where the setting comes into play. In this era, the perception of mental health was wildly different, seen as incurable. Hence why it's such a big deal if James was to find the causes of mental illness, but also explains why the professor believes it could be cured through genetical scientific research, even going so far to believe that it could be correlated to evil, and that pushes him to follow his chase of the origin of evil. The insanity he's witnessed is a symptom of evil spreading, he believes, and if he can find a cure, this would also save his daughter, as well as bringing him success. As they experiment on the skeleton, they observe the aggressive black cells that attack normal blood, and through seeing how the serum affects the cells, will hopefully be able to create a genuine cure, and they seem to find success, causing a field around the cells that protects it from the evil ones. So the only thing left to do is to test it on a living species. At the same time, Penelope is slowly showing similar signs to her mother. Hearing voices from the locked room and the lack of knowledge only fuels the internal curiosity, and she discovers the truth along with a lot of aspects of her mother's life. The film does look at the place of women during the Victorian era. Penelope has been isolated for a lot of her life, borderline disregarded in opposition to Emmanuel's pursuit of science and ambition that is taking him too far. We've seen him attempt to control her socially.
I've tried to keep from you anything which might cause you distress.
Then eventually leading to the subjugation by injecting her, after seeing that she's going down a similar route as her mother. During this period, women were much likely to be diagnosed with hysteria, seemingly based on how they were viewed to not have independence, so people in power believed that would contribute to the mental illness. The outburst between Emmanuel and Penelope is very well earned. We like this guy, but he is a very flawed and complex character. Rather than dealing with the challenges that became apparent, he locked the memory of his wife away, the memory that he wanted to retain, and refused to let that memory into Penelope so that he could control her too. That said, I don't believe that it was malicious in intent. I think he did choose to do this in effort to protect his daughter. It's just that his process in doing so was so very misguided due to the fear of mental health and because of that lack of understanding. We see in flashbacks the complex life he had with his wife as we see her meet other men after Emmanuel. As her mind deteriorates into violence, it's a really tragic watch. This results with Penelope falling ill too, and as the professor is blind due to his own egotistical confidence in science, he injects her with the cure without second thought, believing it will prevent her from falling the same fate. But from this jump cut, we see the results were only temporary, and Emmanuel's partner says thank God they didn't try it on a person. Yeah, thank God. How's this? Am I saying all the right things?
It's good. Doing well.
I haven't really spoken about the escaped inmate Lenny that was mentioned earlier in the film, and I feel like that's the weakest part for me. I believe it's there to showcase James's dismissal of his patience and negligence to his security, inconsiderate actions, and rushing through his experiments, but in contrast to the main plot of the film, it does feel a tad out of left field. But we saw him mess up a bar not too long ago, and now follow Penelope into a bar herself. When a man attempts to take advantage of her, she rightfully fights back, but that spirals into a violent spree throughout the bar and into the streets, as we see the serum clearly start to take effect. We see how the men in the bar treat her and how she's judged for her initial response, but more people still continue to try and take advantage, but then look down on her when rejected. After running off, Penelope runs into Lenny, the escaped patient, and he doesn't actually attack her at first, but then, for seemingly no reason, she kills him, showcasing the real change that this serum has had. In his attempts to control mental illness and his daughter's life, he became the catalyst for the change. He's the one who has continued the cycle. James returns Penelope home with the intention of looking at his brother's experiments and sees they are on very similar paths, looking for resolves for mental illness, and they're both doing so in somewhat immoral ways, both determined to resolve insanity, and both somewhat for reward rather than care as much. Upon reading through Emmanuel's notes, he realizes a lot of it speaks about the skeleton he saw, so naturally decides to steal it, and it's successful, leaving Emmanuel's partner presumably dead in the process. The professor pursues, and after brief contact with water, the flesh begins to grow on the skeleton. And then the storm rolls in, and with the bone exposed to the rain, comes to life. It's great to finally see this thing act. It's a hulking, intimidating figure with the cloak makes it look like the Grim Reaper in shots. The flesh effects are pretty gross. By the time Emmanuel catches up, the creature has killed one man and the cloaked figure is seen walking away. So he races home, reflecting on the unraveling chaos that he has played a role in. As Penelope worsens, she kills a maid with handcuffs that were being used to restrain her, and at the same time as this, we see the cloaked silhouette of evil impose upon the house. This is an incredible shot. I absolutely adore it. Reflective of what we've seen take place in the house during the movie, whilst also showing the impending doom, impending end that is slowly catching up with the professor. And knowing of what was knocking at the door, Penelope just opens it up. The beast rummages through the house, and we deduct that it's presumably looking for the finger that the professor kept, and since burned. Through seemingly some kind of mind control, the creature forces Emmanuel to open the door, and we see its full face, and even behind its eyes, and it's horrible. It's brilliantly brought to life, and seeing behind the eyes is an excellent touch. Seeing the blood dripping down just gives me a weird, unsettling feeling. But after replacing its finger with one of Emmanuel's, it vanishes, leaving Emmanuel found by his half-brother James, potentially infected, but definitely in despair. And as we end the film, we come back to the opening scene with the painting, and we find out that this takes place in the very same asylum that James owns. And apparently this isn't actually his daughter. Was he just insane the whole time? Well, his missing finger would say differently, meaning James has taken advantage of both of their positions for his own gain, finding out that he won the prize 3 years ago. The professor's need to control, even if it is somewhat out of love, leads not only him, but everyone around him down a path of darkness. To be so confident in yourself to conquer evil itself is a task you can only fail at. But he truly believes that he can take up a godlike role, even referring to himself as one earlier in the film.
I am the white god. I alone hold this tremendous power of good and evil in my hands.
The biggest flaw I have with the film is its incorporation of James's plot. It works well enough to compare the brothers' approaches and ideologies, but I just feel like James maybe needed more of a presence. I mean, I felt the stuff with Lenny felt a bit forced in. And as for the actual ending, it leaves us with mixed feelings. Whilst the professor has every right to end up in a jail after performing experiments on his daughter essentially, Penelope less so. She has been a victim here. She needed help beforehand as we began to see her mental state change, but even more so after being affected by the unchecked serum. Also, just the whole thing with James being the one winning, it's kind of frustrating, but in a good way. And it is ironic that Emmanuel's fear of mental health is kind of what kicked this whole film into play, and by the end, he's been the one submitted to an asylum, and being the one treated as insane by his own brother. How did we do? Did we do good?
You covered everything. Good job.
But that's about all I have to say about the creeping flesh. Definitely recommend it. So next up, this spooky season.
This whole world is lifeless and dead.
I've been here before.